So yeah, as I say, man, for me, I'm about the history of this thing because I think it's something that, there's a big legacy and potential in it, and I think it's very underappreciated, and it needs to be documented because, for the next generations that come after me, which might not have the opportunities that I've had to speak to and be amongst some of the people who were part of the scene originally. So that's why I feel like what you're doing is vital, and this as I said, the legacy of it and how it's been so crucial into what we have now, and the whole evolution of it. Yeah, there's some amazing stories, and I see it as my heritage as well as as a British born, person. This is part of youth culture, music culture, everything. So, what was I saying now?
Well, before you go on, I mean,
go on.
We've literally met about 4 minutes ago, and we started talking about Raregroove. We haven't even introduced ourselves, so let's do that on camera.
All right.
I'm Steve.
Cool.
Nice to meet you,
man. Greetings and blessings every time, man.
And this is the untold story of Raregroove, and you very kindly agreed to talk. And the couple of minutes we were talking before we switched the camera on, you introduced yourself as somebody. I call you, the new blood, the new generation, the people who are going to carry the baton forward for, the music that's come from the past.
Definitely.
In a few years' time, guys like me and the old school that you look up to, they won't be around.
That's what I'm saying.
And to learn the heritage and to learn everything that's been going on and the music and understand
the history behind it.
The history, yeah, exactly, the history behind it. So, as you're a collector DJ, would you say?
So as I said, I don't style myself as a DJ as such, but I'm a music lover. Started collecting reggae music and soul music. I really found a passion for both. Anything from the 50s, 60s, coming right up into my era, and I caught the bug, and I'm still here doing the same old thing. But along the way, I've met a lot of interesting characters. Some who were foundation and instrumental in the creation of the various scenes across the reggae and soul scene in London primarily. I'm not really too knowledgeable about the outside London scene, but especially specific to my area, like the northeast London sides. I have, spent a lot of time speaking with a lot of people who were, as I said, the foundations of those scenes, both on the reggae and soul side. So, when I talk about, people like who were involved in pirate radio, all the original clubs people used to go to, and, as I said, it's a journey. That's how I see it. I just see it as a journey, and, I'm just here to see how far it will take me.
So who are the people that you, first of all, who are the close connections you talk to?
Okay.
And what are the names that keep reoccurring?
Okay, so when it comes to Raregroove, I have to mention names like DJ Skanker, who is actually the brother of Lennox Lewis. Guys like Dirty Dennis Company Soul Sound, Cass Manhattan, a guy called Mr. Biggs, out of a sound called Just Good Friends. And those are just a few. That's just a few. I've had the pleasure of meeting and talking to other people as well, but that's just just off the top of my head, some of the most crucial people and some of the most genuine and knowledgeable sources that I've been able to tap into, and it's an honor and a blessing, really. It really is, because as I said, a lot of the stories I've been able to hear, experiences that they've shared, it's priceless. It really is, and that's why I appreciate someone like yourself who is actually, being proactive in documenting it. Because, as I said, the way you're documenting it is the way that the next generation, they, as you said, they won't have the honor to sit down and physically talk to these people. They're gonna watch it on YouTube and or whatever sources in a digital way. So that's why I'm definitely in tune with what you're doing.
Yeah, so the actual music itself, when I'm talking to people, one of the big themes about the Rare Groove scene is the way that it sort of went off in two separate channels. Firstly, you got the two-step scene, which came out like, the black shebeens and the black party scene, where the reggae sound systems began to introduce it. And then you've got the funky West End scene, which was where you'd hear the more sort of funky JBs and the 70s sound that surrounded the JBs.
Okay, so in terms of like some of the foundation Rare Groove tunes, I think one of the tunes for me which constantly keeps being mentioned as a crucial track, as inciting or this kind of movement, is a track, like you said, Maceo Parker, Cross the Tracks.
Yep.
Yeah, that I always seem to hear that tune, and there's a few others that actually kind of crossed over. So there was certain kind of vibe that was kind of, as you said, like the local scene was dominated predominantly by the reggae scene, but soul segments were always there. Maybe not the main dish, but as a side, if you want to put it that way. But the next generation that kind of came up, there was a bit of like two camps. You had the soul man them and the reggae man them, or reggae people, or the soul people. But then, as I said, in the local dances, some of the second generation decided to incorporate, some of the more, like, not just the traditional Motown cuts or Atlantic cuts, which the older people would have had in their soul segments. They went for the more funkier stuff, because, as I said, as you alluded to, uptown, you had the funky scene, the dancers, the whole, I think like, places like Camden, uptown, West End, and all of that was kind of like that kind of scene. Whereas there was a certain, I don't know how to put it, man, because as I said, like even Cross the Tracks is still a bit more of a funk tune, but what it is, especially with the reggae scene, it's a trait that passed down to the soul DJs of buying exclusive records, similar to what the guys up north were doing with the northern soul scene, in terms of they weren't just playing the everyday run-of-the-mill Motown and Atlantic cuts. They were actually going out and sourcing rarer cuts. So that kind of trait was kind of passed on in a similar way to some of the soul DJs who were part of that like, as I said, the guys like the Skankers, the Dennis Company Soul Sound, Just Good Friends, and that era of DJs. They kind of went out of their way. A lot of them were involved in the actual trade of the music, had record shops or worked in record shops, but and I've actually heard a lot of them tell stories of actually even going out to America and actually sourcing the music, going on road trips to source the music, which, as a youngster, that just really sounds like, it's just like, that's just like, what more fun could you want than that? A road trip in America, hunting down the rarest gems you can find. And those days, they were still kind of like, they were kind of standard, but some cuts were rare, you get me, but some cuts weren't as rare then as they are now. Obviously with 25 years, there's going to be a lot less copies available, so something that was rare then is going to be super rare now. But there were still rare cuts, and they weren't being discriminate. They weren't going out there and just buying stuff that was on the top 10 in the charts. They were looking like, they weren't satisfied with that. They wanted like other things, because as I said, the whole exclusivity of you know, the tradition of playing records that no one else can play, that you introduce to the scene, and it mashes up the place, and all the other DJs are like, what tune is that? Where did that come from? Where did you get that? Like, who is, you know, to the point where, you know, like, as I said, in the reggae culture, guys used to like scratch out the names of their records, and you felt tip markers and rub them out so that DJs couldn't spy on the titles and etc. That sense of like being exclusive and bringing something fresh or something new to the table, you know, that's what I sense when I talk to all these guys, that sense seemed to be their hunger as DJs, you know. So as I said, the culture, you know, locally, you know, is what I've kind of grown up around. I haven't really done much of the West End scene, but the local scene is where,
just tell everyone where we are, because you talk about local. We are local now. We're right in Lewisham. Lewisham, New Cross.
And you know, like this area, I mean, you know, not for positive reasons, but it is synonymous with parties, you know, when you talk about that, the New Cross fire, which is a sad example of that era and that time, but in one way, as I said, it does kind of encapsulate that kind of vibe, and that, you know, like, you know, the reason, you know, like, and like how the youth culture was at that time. That was the norm, and you know, I think even my generation, we still kind of grew up with that culture, like, you know, 16th birthday parties, 18th birthday parties, you know, those little milestones in your youth, like 21st birthdays and stuff like that. Like, you know, when you have those milestones, you know, usually, you know, it was like a little house party, and you get, you know, there's always someone in your age group who's like a popular DJ, up and coming or whatever, is doing bits, and you know, it's that whole culture, like, and you know, it's I would say it probably still goes on to a certain extent nowadays, but it's not obviously what it was. Nowadays everyone's kind of more club focused and wants to rave in clubs, but even on the older people scene, there's still that same essence of and spirit of what they created. They still you know, they still revisit it, and still a lot of them are still, you know, doing their thing from Friday to Friday night to Sunday night. They're out there doing their thing. A lot of DJs are still doing that, and they've been doing it for like 20, 30, you know, plus years.
So,
you know?
What's amazing talking to you is obviously you weren't there when the original Raregroove scene was evolving.
Yeah, definitely.
But it feels like, you know, you've had a hunger for the knowledge of what was it like. You know, what did it feel like? What was the music? So it's really interesting to talk to you, because you're representing, you know, the next generation going forward, and that's one of the reasons we're doing the documentary, is to make sure that the history lives on and people really understand what went down. So as you know, as one of the younger generations, sort of picking up from where, you know, the older sound systems left off, what is it that makes you hungry for this music? I gather that you're, you know, a music lover.
Okay, so, you know, in my generation, growing up in the 90s, 80s, you know, 80s born, 90s raised, in the evolution of hip-hop at that time, the usage of two-steppy and soulful samples was heavily used. Whether it was Dr. Dre, whether it was Puff, P. Diddy, you know, the producers, and I guess I kind of gravitated toward that. And I want, like, obviously, when I used to listen to pirate radio growing up as a kid, and they would sometimes have these interludes where, you know, there were certain DJs that their shows kind of captivated me, and I just kind of liked the two-steppy vibe. And there was a couple intervals where there was no DJ on the radio, but they would like fill the gaps with like just tunes running, and I used to like take those little moments, because it was like perfect opportunity, because there's no one talking over the tunes, and I would sit back and go over them. And I caught onto the two-step Raregroove vibe from, you know, like, you know, for me it's like early, and this, you know, from like 13, 14 years old. You know, I don't know, there was something about that sound. It was different to the classic soul that I knew previously. Previously, I only knew the, as I said, the classic, what everybody knows, the Atlantics, the Motowns, some of the Philly records, the OJs, etc. But this was like a different level. This was like a whole education. And music, I wasn't a sports person. I love my football, but I was never really much of an actual player. So music was my thing, and as I said, that two-steppy vibe, and it was something different that, like, I just knew I was onto something that wasn't, it was a vibe, but not everybody, like, this was a higher level of music that I was actually listening to than the commercial, everything what I was hearing on, like, when my dad would listen to bloody Magic FM or Heart 106.2, you know what I mean? Or even, the similar stations, Jazz FM or whatever, So for me, as I said, music was my thing, but I was never satisfied. I kind of developed a hunger for something more than just the commercial output, and I think that's kind of that kind of encapsulated really a hunger for something else, something more, something outside of the commercial top 10 latest and greatest what everybody playing or knows.
Well, you touched upon something I find really interesting. So, we're promoting a night called the London Raregroove Party, and we're having to promote to a new generation like yourselves. And while I'm out flying, because I do it old school, I actually give out the actual flyers. And one of the things I immediately say when I approach a younger person of your generation is Raregroove. Do you know Raregroove? And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. And if it's no, I say it's the music that hip hop sampled, because that gives them an immediate reference point. And then I say
that is the key link to link it. And even now, there are still quite heavy music is still being heavily sampled. Yeah, I'll give you an example. In 98, 99, something like that, I remember Naughty by Nature, they had a tune that sampled Benny Golson I Can't Stop Dancing to the Music, and I didn't know it at the time, but there was something about that tune in particular. It wasn't the lyrics of the song, I didn't care for the lyrics, but that beat just really, took me in. And then years later I'm finding it's a Raregroove tune, but I knew it wasn't the standard soul, which I knew this was something, it just had a vibe to it that I just knew, this is something different. And as you say, I think that's the most common link that you can link it to when trying to break it down to the younger generation. You're spot on with that.
Thank you. And then what I say as a follow-up is, look, you know your hip hop, because all these guys do know their hip hop and the girls know their hip hop, and it's like, well, this is the music that hip hop sampled, but we play the originals. And so to introduce, and then I say, look, you're going to recognise most of the music we play. You might not have heard of Raregroove, but come along, and I'll tell you the excitement in their eyes of, wow, this sounds really interesting. And I think that's that's the place where sort of Raregroove has its main sort of legacy on the timeline. Is that generations after, they sample and they sample and they dig for these amazing tracks that really make the hip hop come alive, because all you've got really is that if you take the sample out, you just got an R&B beat or a kind of a very basic just hip hop beat.
The whole two-step is a danceable beat. It's not a ballad, I don't know, I won't say that, but it's a vibe. It's not something just Oh, well, yeah, I do just sit at home and listen to, but you know what I mean. It's a dance music. It is dance based. You
Yeah.
know. So yeah, definitely. As I said, it's the vibe, and that's why it gave hip hop the pep in its step. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know the groove, the groove. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's why it's called Raregroove.
Right. That's
Because
the
it
essence
was
of
all
it,
about the groove, and it was the emphasis on the dance floor. And for me, you know, the two strands, the funky side gave the dancers like a funky workout they could express themselves, but then the two-step, which, you know, we're sort of learning came mainly from the reggae scene. That gave the space, and the space for me was the magic.
But also, can I just interject with this thing, yeah? Now, you're saying about that, now, the difference is, yeah, like, as you say, like, the uptown thing was the dancing, people actually dancing as dancers, but the local scene, coming with, when I talk about the shubeens and the blues dances, yeah, that evolved out of the reggae raving scene, that was very influent. Like the dancing style was not actually an individual dancing style; it was actually partner dancing. Yeah.
Are you talking about on the two-step scene?
What, no. I'm saying like what translated to the two-step thing. Yeah. Like as I said, uptown with the funky stuff, you had like people actually expressing dancing individually. Yeah. Or in crews, facing off with each other, you know, what evolved into street dance, yeah. But on the local scene, that whole raving scene was different. When you went to like, you know, people would have their skanks or whatever, yeah, but people weren't really like, as it wasn't really based on the individual dancing. It was a more partner dancing style, yeah. What people used to call, mildly, rubbing and scrubbing, yeah. The kind of dancing that us as the younger generation, when we go to family functions and we see the elders doing it, we all have a little giggle, yeah. That little hip hug shuffle. Yeah, like you know, up against walls.
Wallpaper stripping music.
Right. You know those stories that you hear. That's
Lovers Rock.
Right. That Lovers Rock-esque music, right? And that's what I'm saying. Even that scene had a bit of an influence on the Lovers Rock scene. That same, because even when you look at Lovers Rock here, there's a lot of soul covers in there. A lot of covers of soul tunes. Some commercial soul tunes and some two-steppy tunes. Like you have One Blood with
Be Thankful.
You can always get in touch with me, girl, anytime.
I was thinking of the cover version of William DeVaughn, Be Thankful. As soon as you said One Blood, that's one of the tracks I absolutely love by One Blood.
You can get in touch with me.
Oh, right, okay.
Like that's like a two-steppy, that's a cover of a two-steppy beat, you understand? So there was that, you know, so yeah, as I say, man, it's as I said, it really kind of captured my interest, and I'm kind of like a rarity in my generation. I don't really know others that really kind of have taken it up as passionately or to their heart as I have, but as I say, it's been a pleasure to kind of express that and kind of even just put that out there and just let the world know that, yeah, there are still some of us, you know, youngsters out here who do actually check for it and do actually, you know, have a genuine interest in it. Because I know that the older generation sometimes, you know, which is understandable, do worry that this legacy, you know, might not be, you know, shared and, you know, loved in the way that I do. So,
well, you know, thanks for taking time out and you know, adding to the untold story of Raregroove. It's been a real pleasure talking to you this evening. I just want to give you an invite. This is for the London Raregroove party. It's on 7th of May. Cool. And again, you know, we're introducing the next generation to Raregroove, and you know, the what we call the magical music of Raregroove.
Definitely, I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
So this
it's
is
been a pleasure. My name is Sir Kells, coming out of East London, and yeah, Love Raregroove, love Revival, old school rules.
And sorry, just before you go,
Yeah.
tell us, where can we hear you play out? Are you on the
Alright,
radio?
so,
or
no, I used to be on radio, but I'm a family man and can't really commit to the time slots that were available. So, and I haven't really got the setup to do internet radio at home just as yet. But I do have on the social media platform called Clubhouse, I do have a room each and every Thursday at around the same time as this. And it is actually going on tonight, but I'm not hosting tonight. I've relinquished them duties. It's actually the Reggae and Dancehall Versus Club. So I've kind of taken the idea of what Swizz Beats and Tim have been doing with the versus R&B and soul stuff, and I'm doing that in Reggae and Dancehall. So that's on the app called Clubhouse, and that's more or less midnight, Thursday nights, Friday morning kind of thing.
And apparently you're playing at this venue as well.
Yeah, I'll be here 24th of the 3rd, 22, which is in not too far from now.
So where? Just let everybody know where we are now, so where they can find you.
Yeah. Well, this is the Flower of Kent. Regular night spot every Thursday for the best and finest in revival music. Strictly vinyl, no laptops, no MP3s. Hosted by a good guy named Errol Frenchy. Yeah, man, done now. Big up every time, man.
So, right, we're just going to end on one question, which is, this is the untold story of Raregroove, and what we do is we ask everyone to recount a story that's never been told before, in the public domain. Something that you have either been told or a personal experience that, again, has never been told, that helps us to piece together the untold story of Raregroove.
To be honest, I can't think of one off the spot. I can't think of one off the spot.
Can we come back to you?
Most definitely you can. Most definitely you can.
Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure talking to you.
You're welcome anytime.